We get a special guest. I'll just read a little bit background about him, then Ningo tell you about himself. We get Dr. Peter Baofu. I'll read this. He's an American visionary and author of 150 new theories and visions in 180 scholarly books as of July 2023, and numerous articles to provide a visionary challenge to conventional wisdom in all fields of knowledge, i.e. the social sciences, the formal sciences, the natural sciences, and the humanities, with the aim for unified theories of everything, together with numerous visions of future histories in relation to the mind, nature, and society and culture. Anyway, welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I don't know if you can just add a little bit of that introduction for people to know you. Where were you born? They're watching you right now.
Yeah, I think you have made a wonderful introduction already, so there's not much that I can add except to say that I have been in more than 160 different countries by now as part of my global tour, to have an understanding of humanity, not just by reading a book, or for example. And I do that not because I want to understand one culture, one ethnicity. I just want to understand all of them because I'm a global thinker. And I want to provide some solution to global problems. And that's why I have provided more than 100 and different visions of the human future. And they are about the entire humanity. It's not about one culture, one society, one ethnic group, one race, one gender. No, about all of them. That's why I'm here.
Okay. So now you said you've, written over 150 books. I don't know if I'm right. 180.
And 150 visions and theories.
You wrote all those books alone?
Yes.
So tell us how.
Well, that is a I certainly do not recommend anyone to do that because you really have to sacrifice your life. You have to spend day and night doing nothing. And focusing on that, you have to sacrifice. You must not have a family because otherwise you don't have the energy and the resources and doing all of this. And you have to do it not just for 1 week, year after year after year after year. I have been doing this ever since I was young.
Doing this, what do you really want to achieve in doing this? Going to different parts of the world, and even when you've even written 180 books, why do you really want to go to other parts of the world to do that?
That's important because I was educated in the West. I was, let's say, all my degrees have been from the US, including my high school education. And I learned from the academic environment in the US that many of the information is too Western-centric. And to understand the world, we need to go out and explore the rest of the world. And after having been in so many countries, 160 by now, I realized that many of the information that I have been exposed to in Western mass media is not correct. So there is a way to enlighten you, and that has consequences because then you can understand the world much better, and then you can provide some solutions which will work much better than otherwise.
Are you saying that some of the information the Western media are giving out there, it's not correct to what's happening originally on the ground?
Yes, by the way, because I have been in so many countries now, it's not just true for the US, it's true for almost every other country on earth. Each country that I go to is always have their own way to look at the world, and they think that their vision, their world view is true, and the other one is not. And this is true about every country that I go to. So one way that I have learned is that I do appreciate the environment that I have been in the US, but I also understand the negative side of it. So if I go to Africa, go to China, go to Germany, it's the same issue again.
Okay. What's the negative side of it?
The negative side is what I just mentioned.
The wrong information.
Yes, and if you stay in one country or one culture most of your life, and over time your mindset is very narrow because you have been exposed to only one-dimensional information from your own culture, society, tradition, whatever it is.
So traveling gives you a lot of experience.
Well, it gives you multiple dimensions of looking at things, and then you realize that none of them is true. The truth is often somewhere between different combinations, and unless you have the privilege to go through so many of them. Many people on earth do not have that
Traveling
privilege.
in different parts of the world, how do you see tradition and religion, and how do you fit into these countries?
I have written quite a number of books on religion, also many books on tradition, because it's under the category of culture. If you don't mind, I can just summarize very quickly.
Right.
I said that I have provided 150 new visions and theories of the human future. They can be classified in two major categories. One of them is theory, the other one is meta-theory. And under theory, I subclassify them into the mind, nature, society, and culture. And under culture, I subclassify them into subcategories like tradition, religion, dancing, music, ideology, philosophy, and so on and so on. So that's why I have 150 different new visions and theories. Why do I just have one? One is not enough because there are so many different issues. That's why my work is about the totality, not just about humanity, but also about all fields of knowledge with no exception.
Okay. Now, let's go back to your books. Where could somebody find your books? I mean, in countries. I'm not talking about Amazon or on the website. Where should someone go and find it?
Yes. My books have been published not just in the West, but also in the East. Some of the books have been published, let's say, in the US, some of them are in the UK, some of them are in East Asia, some of them in South Asia. So it's not that
in
only
what
one publisher. All of them have been in English.
Okay. So again, it comes to your vision. You're going out to different parts of the world. Well, how could people have that message when it's only on English? Let's say there are countries who do not even read English. There are Arabic countries, there are different countries.
Yes.
So how do your message go through?
There are two solutions, more than two, but I just want to summarize that very quickly.
Yeah.
One of them is that sometimes when I'm on TV, I also speak different languages because I know about 10 of them.
Okay.
So some of my TV interviews...
Which are some of these languages? Can you just tell us?
I'll just give you some example. French, let's say Spanish, Russian, for example, Cantonese, Mandarin, Portuguese, something like that. And the other solution is that people nowadays, you go to Google Translate, you go to the internet, you even you can click on Translate, and they would translate whatever page that you are reading.
Okay.
Now they even some of the programming languages also have the ability to translate a video too. So we are living in the age of globalization. So it's not like 5,000 years ago, even though Trump, for example, is engaging in de-globalization.
Okay.
But
so these theories, like you're talking about, is it 150?
Yes.
The vision. I mean, how many countries more? You were talking about going to more countries. I mean, do you have a timeline? Which country you should end up with and how long it should take?
No, I normally I don't do research like this because then you limit yourself. Normally I'm very flexible, and in fact it's one of the most important things for anyone who want to do any research in foreign countries and also traveling too. If you plan too much, organize too much, and you are too rigid and too inflexible, then you often end up not getting what you want to get. So you must be flexible. At the last minute, you must be willing to cancel or reschedule, because that's very important to do. And
so who is financing your trip? Like you mentioned, you've moved to 180 countries all over the world?
No, I said that I have been in about 160 different countries. 180, okay, there are three different numbers people often mess up.
Yeah.
I have written about 180 different books.
Okay.
I have proposed 150 different new theories and visions, and I have been about 160 different countries so far.
Okay. So 160 countries so far?
Yes.
Who financed that trip?
No, most of the time I financed that myself because I learned that in the very educational way. But when let's say, at the beginning, I was funded by some educational foundations, the government and all that, and I learned over time that I was restricted in what I say. Whatever I say had to get approval. Even my publication had to show report.
Before you say anything, because they are paying you.
Yeah, it's like when people hire you or pay you for something, they expect you to do something for them, and that's why it's not just in the US. Everywhere you go, by the way, even in Africa, whatever you do, if someone pays you something, that person has some control over you.
Okay. All right.
So I don't do that anymore now. I do that myself.
So how do you get the money?
No, I do that in a very frugal way. And you have to plan ahead again. So it's not that something that I think about this morning and I come here today. It doesn't. You have to plan a few years. I have to be strategic. You must have some goals in life, and you must plan for it a few years beforehand, step by step. And that's why China, by the way, is so successful in economic development, because the Chinese, unlike the Westerners, they plan ahead. They plan even for 100 years. In the U.S., it's unthinkable. They cannot even plan for 1 or 2 years.
So like a professor, I mean, in this part of the world, we are saying, well, sometimes people will say America is the world power, but the way things are going now, it changed. So what can you say about China and the West?
I have made a prediction. Remember, I said that I have provided about 150 different new visions. One theory, one vision is I predicted in 1995, about 30 years ago. At that time, I made a prediction that China could become the dominant superpower on Earth, not the U.S. A few years later, I wrote another book, another theory. I also proposed that China and India will become the dominant superpowers on Earth in this century, not the U.S., not Russia, not Japan, and not anyone else. And they will be the dominant. So, and then I make another prediction a few years ago, another theory, and I said that there is a second Cold War emerging between China and the U.S., but that's only temporary. We are in Cold War II, but we are moving now to Cold War III.
What's that Cold War for?
Say that again?
What's the Cold War for? The Cold War between China and the West?
It is for global domination, global influence. If you look into human history, it has never been a time where everyone was equal. It's always unequal on Earth. Some powers are much more powerful. Some are very weak. The power, they are often in control. The weak ones have to obey or have to maneuver to survive. And no one of them stay the same forever. Empires, they rise, they fall. The British Empire, the Dutch Empire, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Russian, even the Chinese Empire, they collapsed in the late 19th century. Now they are rising again.
Okay. If I can ask you, like, I mean, being a professor, and what's your experience about the Ukraine war? What some of us are hearing, like, Russia didn't want, I mean, Ukraine to join NATO because they will be at the border, and America has been having bases in different parts of the world. What's the whole fight about?
And I wrote about this a lot, and I was on TV a lot. People ask me the same question. And I often said that this war is very unfortunate. It's avoidable. It's very unnecessary. If the three parties in question, Russia and the West and Ukraine, behave in a different way, it's totally unnecessary. Let me talk about each of them and tell you why they mess up.
Okay.
And each of them has contributed to the emergence of the war. Number one, let's talk about the West and then Ukraine and Russia in the order, without saying that which one is to blame. First, the West, at the end of the Cold War, remember the U.S. was in the unipolar moment. The U.S. was in the stage of euphoria about the Cold War. That's why you have the end of history thesis. Those are propaganda, by the way. They think that liberal democracy and capitalism, they are the peak, they are the end of history. There will be no more economic and political system which can be better than that. Now, at that time, contrary to the agreement between Russia before the Soviet Union, after Russia and the West, not to expand NATO. Because during the Cold War, as you Eastern Europe and Central Europe, they are buffer zone.
You're right.
So that the NATO troops can only station far from the other side. No troop have been stationed next to Russia. Right now it does. Okay, a lot of troops are stationing there. Look at Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Slovakia. The Slovak Republic and the Czech Republic, Slovakia now. Russia has made several warnings. Do not cross the line. Because if you make all of this country to be NATO, that means that all these missiles will reach Russia, Moscow in a few minutes. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's the same thing at that time that the U.S. warned the Soviet Union, do not put all these missiles into Cuba because then the missile can reach New York in a few minutes. We cannot accept it. It's the same thing. By the way, that was in response to the U.S. put some missiles in Turkey. And that's why the Soviet Union said, do not put the missiles in Turkey. If not, we are going to counter you. The U.S. said, no, we do whatever is on national security. That's why you have the crisis. And then the resolution of the crisis is the Soviet Union could withdraw the missile from Cuba. The U.S. would withdraw the missile from Turkey. That's actually what happened. It's the same thing here. Russia made the warning several times, do not expand NATO further into our border because you are threatening our national security. Well, they did. So now Russia responses, and they have been supporting a larger group. In Moldova is another good example. They occupy some of the territories. In Georgia, for example. Now in Ukraine, for example, especially after the Maidan Revolution, the far right was in power. So they talk about NATO, the EU, they are going to become, so Russia reacted and crossed the border and invade. Now, that is the problem for the West. Now the problem for Ukraine, and then the problem for Russia. Ukraine was also making a blunder under Zelensky, because I think that he made a lot of blunders which could be avoided. Number one, he underestimated Russia. He thinks that if he had the support of the West, Russia could not dare. In fact, Georgia made the same underestimation. They thought that the U.S. and the West were on the side of Georgia. Russia could not dare because NATO is going to come in and fight them. They did not. They also underestimate, for example, the powers, their own power to resist. They think that if they keep fighting, they will win. It doesn't matter about Russia. They did not. They lost. And all these are very, now they talk about now the peace agreement, the peace negotiation. They are trying to say maybe we can let go the Crimea. And look, you could have done that a long time ago. Huh?
For them to let go, please, like Crimea and other places that the Russians
what choice do they have? I mean, look at Ukraine.
So do you think they will have peace, or, I mean, some amount of ceasefire with Russia holding Crimea and other places, while the U.S. is telling Ukraine to give up this place?
I think that in the longer term, it was somewhere in between, because remember, the way that you talk sometimes has a lot of morality, should or should not. In global politics, it's about power. It doesn't, you like it or do not like it. If they occupy it, they occupy it, okay? It's not that, oh, it's evil, you should not do it, so what? Do you have the power to kick them out? If not, then they will keep it. Look, the European colonizers, they enslave Africans, they rape African women. Do you like it? So what? You can cry, you can shout. At the end of the day, you do not have the power to kick them out. They colonize you. You do not like it. In terms of morality, you are number one, okay, but they don't care about morality. The same about geopolitics, it's a question of power. So the same thing about you. You want to join NATO, right? Can they stop you? They try. Maybe you refuse in the end. Now Ukraine is more and more under the control of the West. Now Russia is also have another problem. Russia, as you know, the history of Russia is a colonial expansion for a tiny territory. They expand all the way to have the largest country on earth. And they have been doing that. I was in Eastern Europe too. I was in almost all of the 15 Soviet republics. I have been, that's why I also speak Russian. And I understand very well the ethnic minority do not like Russians because they are very bullying. They dominate. They are hegemonic also. So I don't take with either side because I was also in Ukraine too. I also know how corrupt they are. Ukrainians are very corrupt. Ukraine is an extremely corrupt country. Okay? So all three sides have been doing something that pissed off a lot of other people. So the war now emerged. Now what's the peace process? We are talking about this. Trump is talking about that. Now Zelensky is under pressure to talk about peace before. He still doesn't like it. He still wants to engage endless war, asking the EU now to fight for them. Okay?
And the EU don't have that might.
Yeah, and that's why I said, in geopolitics, you have your wish. Forget about your wish. You can wish whatever you like. You can wish to be God if you like. Okay, that's your wish. But the reality is different. Ukraine has no choice. Just as Trump said, you have no court. Do you remember the conversation? You have no court.
Yeah.
We are the boss. You are not the boss. You do what we ask you to do.
So what do you think will happen at the end of it all?
Say that again?
What do you think will happen now that, I mean, Ukraine said they want to join NATO, America said you don't have the cards to play with Russia, you need to give peace a chance and give up some of the land. What's your conclusion?
I think that in the longer term, the peace process is somewhere in between. Ukraine, however, the wish is they can fight, but they will not have the power to take back Crimea and the territories. Those are gone. The U.S., Russia is going to occupy them. And not only that, the more they attack Russia, the more Russia want to have a bigger buffer zone. Now, do you know that they attack Kurds in Russia? Now, Russia kick them out, but Russia say, because now you attack Kurds, now we want to have a buffer zone too along that. So the more you attack, the more they want a bigger pie, a bigger piece of the pie. So this is why I said each side is making a lot of blunder, and war has killed a lot of people. So
as a professor, what do you think? I mean, when you watch in Ukraine, you see this is going on the other side, the Israel and Palestine and America. What's your take also on that?
The case in Palestine is a bit different, but it's also the same logic. It's a question of different power blocks competing with each other. Okay, we have to go back to the Cold War, the first one, but we don't have time to talk about the historical legacy. But quickly, what Israel is doing right now is self-destructive. Now, Israel can use force because of the U.S. The U.S. give them weapons, the U.S. give them financial aid, the U.S. give them political support, they give them intelligence sharing. Everything that they need, the U.S. gave them for free, by the way.
Sorry to interrupt you. Why do you think all the Arab countries are not supporting Palestine?
Oh, that's because it's just like the same question. How come all Asian countries cannot unite together? How come all Latin American countries cannot unite together? Because they are not the same people. So how come all African countries cannot unite together? Because so what if you are blacks, but you are not the same. Not all Asians are the same.
So why can African countries unite when, if you look, Africa almost like 52 states compared to the United States, they are more united, and why is Africa not united? What's the problem, according to experience?
No, in the case of the U.S., it's a bit different. Even in the case of the U.S., you also have a lot of deviation too. Look right now between MAGA on the far right, and Wogo, whoever on the far left. They cannot even speak. I mean, you have anti-Trump, you also have pro-Trump.
It's better than Africa.
Well, the same thing about Africa too. In Africa, you have a lot of different groups, for example, and that's why you have so many political tribalism, political nepotism in Africa. In African societies, they are very divided. In fact, even right now, the news is that Rwanda is fighting with Congo near the border, and they have been fighting about this for many years now. Look at Somalia and Somaliland, for example, Ethiopia, Eritrea. I can go on there. You have a long list of people. Even within each country, you have civil war.
Nigeria,
you have the, all this kind of.
So why do you think this fighting within African countries? What's the problem? Is it the different tribes or traditions? What do you think is the problem?
There are a lot of different combination, but the deep root problem about all of this is human greed for power, for wealth, for example, for a lot of things. So I want this, you want that, and we cannot come to terms about that. So the only solution left is that, you know what, I'm going to kill you, you kill me, I take over, or you take over, and all that. We are fighting until we win. This is exactly why Israel is tempted by that power, because of the support of the U.S. now, but things are changing because there are two things. That's why I say it's self-destructive. Number one is that Israel is committing genocide with the help of the U.S. That's why the U.S. has been accused of being accomplice of genocide. Now, you might say, so what? That's exactly what Israel has been saying. So what? We ignore the international criminal court. Okay, you can ignore that, but remember, anti-Semitism has been rising since then.
Where are countries afraid to tell the United States and Israel that it's wrong, it's genocide? We've had the United Nations Secretary General saying it, but again, America is still giving weapons to Israel.
Well,
why are countries afraid to tell the West that it's wrong?
Look, it is very easy. If I were a criminal, I rob you. Okay, you say, please do not rob me. It's wrong. It's bad. Do I care? No. If I were a rapist, I rape you. You say, don't rape me, it's bad, it's evil. Do I care? There have been so many criminals, robbers, thieves on earth, terrorists. They kill so many people. Do they care about your morality? You are preaching about morality. They don't do this, give this back to me. They don't care because that's their own colonial expansion. As I said before, you look at the European colonizer. They come to Africa, elsewhere on earth. They colonize you, they rape your women, they control everything. Do they care about your morality?
Don't you think maybe it's less than about colonialization is still happening?
Yes.
And slavery?
Yes.
Maybe civilized?
Yes, but the second solution is that I have not just finished the first solution. The reason it's self-destructive is because now anti-Semitism has been on the rise. Okay? People become anti-Semitic is not for no reason. The more Israel commit genocide, killing other people, ruthless, merciless, people know. And the more they know about it, the more they will oppose you. And more you become isolated. Look at Israel has been isolated in the United Nations General Assembly. It does matter internationally because in the long term you become isolated. And everywhere you live, if you are Jewish, you feel not safe because people will come either burn you or attack you or call you names or do all kinds of discrimination against you. You become self-destructive, and more people, even South Africa now is putting the case of genocide with this international criminal court. You see, even African countries now are reacting toward you. Even China now is even become more sympathetic. Even those people who are not your enemies, even some allies, for example, I think, what's the name of that country? I do not remember. It's an island or something, and Germany or UK now is talking about recognizing Palestine as a nation state. Now, as you know, Israel doesn't care about the two-state solution. Israel doesn't want peace in the Middle East with the Palestinians. They want to kick them out. That's the greater Israel ambition. That's why they try to kick out the Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are occupying the Golan Heights in Syria. They are trying to do the same thing, let's say, in Gaza and the West Bank. They want to kick them out. They control everything, expand the territory, as they have been doing. So now the second solution is that the international global order has changed. Now more and more the West is in decline. So Israel cannot expect the U.S. to be continue to help like this because more and more that kind of power is taken out. That China is a good example of China become more and more important in the Middle East. That means that there is hope for the solution of the Palestinian problem because more and more China will come in. We have a greater say, and they will try to adjudicate a much more impartial solution.
So why do you think Africa is not represented in the 5 members in the United Nations?
You may ask the same question, how come Japan is not represented? How come Germany is not represented? How come India is not represented?
But Africa is a whole continent.
Well, so what? Because you are poor.
But again, they come for all the resources here. So what's your definition of poverty?
Okay, look. In international relations, it's not about your resources that you have in your land. It's a question who control them. Okay. How you can use that to build the power so that people can become afraid of you. If they do something, you will say, I have this power, I can fight you now. But Africa doesn't have the power to fight back. You have the resources underground. Yeah, you have a lot of oil, diamond, minerals, whatever.
So what's your take about some African countries, for example, like Ibrahim Traore, trying to stand out, kick some, the colonial masters out and making use of their own resources? And then at the same time, we're hearing about the West coming to find ways to fight him and all this.
Remember the books that I told you that I wrote about 30 years ago and another one about 25 years ago? I said that the West is declining and we are moving into a new world order. Okay, we are moving into that direction right now as we are speaking. So, and the case of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Nigeria is a good example that the French control in Western Africa and Central Africa in this sense is declining. France is really losing the control. They have been trying to hold it for a long time, even after political independence. They still try to control you. In many ways, it's not just they have military bases. You are still using the French francs, the currency. You are still speaking French. Many of them become Christians. You are still reading a lot of textbooks in school, which are either French or Western. In many ways, they are still controlling your mind. You are not free yet. So in the case of Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger, that is a first step toward that direction, but there's much more can be done about that. That's why they have the support of the local people. But the US and France, of course, are not very happy about it, and that's why France have been trying to assassinate him many times since then. In fact, there's still another assassination attempt last week.
Yeah.
You see that?
So what's your take about the division, the world order? Now it's going to China, or it's going to the east?
Yes.
China, Russia, India, then the United States, Europe, and other places.
The good news for Africa, because we're in Africa, that's why I focus on Africa, is that there's good news for you, because for several hundred years now, the colonial powers, they don't care much about you. They come in only to exploit you, control you, enslave you, and all that. In the last 10 or 20 years, China has been helping Africa a lot. Look at infrastructure is a good example. I don't have the latest figure. I think there's more than $1 trillion that China has already invested into Africa. And many of those money, by the way, is not from African, because Africa does not have money. Otherwise, they could have done that themselves. They don't have the money, they don't have the, and China has been helping them.
So how can Africa come out of this? Controlling their own resources, taking their own responsibility.
Yeah, it's not just taking control of your responsibility. It's also a question of fixing many of the problems that you have. It's not the question of the outside power. Many
what are the problems we have?
For example, corruption is a good example. Insecurity is another example. In Africa, for example, you have many leaders that come into power. They often do not want to leave. Even for those who are democratically elected. Look at Rwanda is a good example. Paul Kagame, he has been elected, but we can argue how much those elections is fair. The point is, have been there for a long time, and people have been criticizing him, and has been very authoritarian. He does not allow anyone to speak
so
out.
Do you call that democracy?
There. I was also
do you call it democracy? I mean, staying in power, I mean, on and on and on, though things are, you could say things are a little bit better, whilst other countries are saying change of government is democracy. So what's your take about?
No, fine. But I don't argue in the way that you argue. That is Western propaganda. You are using Western argument to argue, but I'm not arguing on that basis. I'm not saying that he has to leave, otherwise he's not democratic. I'm just saying that, as I just said before, he's still democratic. The due process has to be followed. But don't you think that
there's another person who can take up his,
yes, but it depends who is the next in line. Just like in the US, why do you think Trump comes back for the second term? If you think that he's so bad, how can people still vote for him? That's because the alternative there are
Is it not because of the ideology he preaches that made people bring him back to power?
Well, that is part of the reason, but it can be self-destructive. But one of the assumptions in your argument, you assume that if you have a democracy, everything will be wonderful. I argue in my books, and that's another theory. Wait. I make another prediction and theory, which is I call post-democracy. Contrary to what you may think, I think that democracy has created a lot of people, a lot of problems, and a lot of people suffer because of democracy. So don't think that if you have democracy, everything will be wonderful.
In your own definition, what is democracy?
Oh, there are many different definitions. One definition is that democracy is for the people, by the people, and for the people. But if you look into many...
Well, you know that's not happening.
Well, it's one of the reasons that democracy is problematic. This has never happened to that full extent, because if a country is a regime, is a leader, is following the mandate of the people, that may mean that they can invade another country, kill another people if the people support that. Look at Israel, by the way. In a way, it's democratic, but many Jewish Israelis want the Palestinians to get exterminated. They call them subhuman, human animals. And so far as the people support that, they are democratic, but they want to kill you. So what I'm saying that just because you have the support of the people, for the people, then the people are doing a lot of evil things in the name of the people, and the people want it. By the way, why do you think a lot of people in Israel right now support Netanyahu? Why don't they kick them out? Because many of them do not like the Palestinians. They consider them as subhumans and human animals. Kick them out. A lot of people are very sympathetic. They don't want peace in the Middle East with the Palestinians. They want to kick them out. They want Israel to be in control. They may not like Netanyahu as a person, but that vision many Jewish Israelis share, but the black Israelis, the Arabic Israelis, they may not share, but they are the minority.
Do you think it's possible for the Israelis to kick out the Palestinians, like Trump is saying, for them to go to Egypt, to Jordan, or, I mean, he wants to go and make a golf course and all that kind of stuff? Do you think it's possible? Because this has been there for years.
No. As I always said, in geopolitics, you have to distinguish between short-term and long-term.
Yeah.
In the short-term, yes. Look, even right now, look, Gaza is hell. Israel has done more, even more than the Nazi has ever done. Okay, even the Nazi, by comparison, did not destroy so much. Okay, they destroy only because they want to conquer. Once they invade, they finish. They don't keep. Right now, what Israel is doing is not just to destroy. They want to exterminate. They want to make sure that Gaza is hell for the Palestinians. They don't even allow any humanitarian aid to come in. They want to make sure that the babies, the women, that's why they kill so many women and babies. Why? Because they want to make sure that there's no more women to produce the babies, and no more babies are going to survive. That means the next generation will be gone. Do you understand me? That's called ethnic cleansing, genocide. You want to exterminate them. Then, of course, in the U.S., no one talk about this because of Jewish lobby and some other reason. They say everything is like the terrorists, the evil, and they show all these kind of things.
So, Fambo, Helen, welcome again. Mina Mama Jalo Suli DJ Base, which we studio gets Professor Baofu, is it?
Yes.
Okay. An American visionary and author. You don't write a lot of books. You don't travel in a different part of the world. And what's really moved you to come to Sierra Leone? How do you? I mean, I believe you've not gone to any. There must be a purpose of going to a certain country. So, Sierra Leone, how it comes about the meditation?
As I said, my vision, my work requires me to visit all countries on earth. There are about 193 countries so far, and I have been about 160. I only have maybe 33 countries to go, and I have the intention to go to all of them. And why do I do that? Because I want to understand humanity on the ground, not just one country. I'm a specialist on one country, not this country. I look to all of them so I can provide some solution to global futures. And that's why many of my visions, that's why I'm a visionary, because I want to provide some visions about human future to improve humanity. It's not just for one country. I'm not like Trump. Make America great again. I'm not interested in make one country great again. I want to improve the human future, no matter who you are, black, white, Asian, African, European, or Latin American. It doesn't matter. I look into all of them. I provide some solution which, as best as I can, to fix many of the problems that we are facing on Earth.
Okay. So, like I said again, when you come to Sierra Leone, when you go to different part of the world in other countries, what do you really look for?
Normally, okay, good. Contrary to what many other researchers used to do, they come in to look for something. That's their agenda. My agenda is not like that. My agenda is I look at everything. Why? Think about it. Because I have written 180 books. Is that on one field of knowledge? No. I have been written in all of them. In the social sciences, in the natural sciences, in the humanities, and in the formal sciences, a comprehensive analysis of the total humanity in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture. That's why when I go to a country, I don't look on one thing. That's what I want to look for. I finish this, now I go home.
But you'll agree with me that you want to go to any country and all the parts to find out what's happening in different parts.
Okay. In data analysis, I'm not sure if you know about data analysis. You don't need to look. If you want to study a population, you don't need to look into every single member of the population.
Just a small
you look into
fraction.
a sample. Insofar as your sample is unbiased, you have a good position to predict, to generalize about the entire population, then within certain margins of error. But you can excuse yourself if your margin of error is small. Okay, we do that. Why? Because we don't have time to look into every single. Look, in Africa, you have a lot of lions, right? Fine. People talk about lions all the time. Have they ever interviewed every single lion on earth? No. They look into some lions and then make a generalization. Lions is like this. They kill this on this. They live in the jungle, this and this. That's exactly what we do. You don't need to go to every single village. You talk to every single. You will never finish.
Just use the sample to.
But that's not necessary, because in many cases you will see that people keep repeating the same thing to you again and again and again. There's no point to keep asking after you ask so many times.
Professor, what's your take about justice? In other words, about the ICC. Do you think it's there for justice? Because we've seen and we've heard about it's made for African leaders. We've heard about Netanyahu. The court has indicted him, but I'm afraid nothing is happening. Whilst America, we are signatory to it, but later on they withdraw in their funds. So what do you think about the international?
In international politics, there are opposing ideologies, but I'm not siding with either of them. But I give good credit to both of them. One of them is realism. That is the ideology that international politics, everything is about power. You don't care about morality. So international criminal court, a lot of major powers, the U.S. and all that, the Western powers, they come in control. And many of them, they are not even a member of the International Criminal Court.
Exactly.
But they will use the International Criminal Court for their own gains, okay? Because they control many of the international political, economic, legal institutions. So if you're a judge in the International Criminal Court, some years ago, I think last year, whatever, a Nigerian woman, or I don't remember her nationality, he was in the International Criminal Court, and he tried to investigate Israel, the UK, and then you know what? The UK, the Israel come in and sanction her and flatten her and take away, confiscate, and all of a sudden she withdraw herself and she resigned. You understand me? That's how you push you. They control them. So at the end of the day, you don't see too many presidents, the American president, or German, British, they will be arrested, but you will see many Africans or Asian or Eastern European, something like that.
Exactly.
Because you don't have the power. They control that. And you don't have it. So I'm not saying I like it. I'm just giving you the analysis of why this happened. You ask why. Now, but there's the opposing ideology about morality. It's called the idealism. We can still have some ideals on earth. We still wish that things could be better, but because that's your ideals to improve. That's why many of my visions, by the way, in many ways, is to provide some solution. So I also have some kind of vision too. But that is much more difficult because in the long term, that's always in the long term. In the short term, you don't have. That's why Israel is killing with pleasure, with no mercy.
You're right.
In the short term, but I'm saying that it's self-destructive, meaning that in the long term, all this is going to haunt them back. And more people now are become anti-Semitic. They are very, very fed up. Even for those people, they are neutral at the beginning. Now everyone knows about it. As soon as someone says Holocaust, someone says genocide.
Yeah.
Understand me? Even ordinary people, you see that it's called soft power. You think too much about hard power, to killing, bombs, tanks, okay. But soft power in many cases are even more important than hard power in the longer term. In the short term, fine, because in the short term there's not much that they can do. You can kill, exterminate, but remember, even if you kill all the Palestinians in Gaza, there are some other Palestinians elsewhere. They will fight you until they get that status.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Maybe we'll have a few more, time to try to wrap it up. But again, I'll ask you about climate change. What's your take? Because we've seen so many destructions in different parts of the world. We've seen earthquakes. We've seen, volcanoes and all that kind of stuff. So
okay, many different occurrences of climate change in human history. But yes, human industrialization has made a major contribution. That's why we had to fix that, go to a green revolution and all that. Yes, but in the short term, many of those countries in Oceania, in Africa, and many other, especially the poor countries, they will suffer most because they're often poor. When you are poor, you don't have the money and the resources to fix the problem. But there are also a lot of solutions that you can do. For example, I visit a lot of farmers. You can diversify your agriculture. You can change your agricultural production. Switch from one product to another one, or you can use biotechnology to engage in agricultural production so that your plants can resist the excessive heat. You can work together because climate change affects a lot of people. So if you focus only for your own neighborhood, that's not going to help because you have to look into the global. That's why they have a lot of agreements or international collaboration about climate change. So there are a lot of things that you can do. This is just some 4 or 5 different solutions that I just give you. It's not hopeless, but we can continue to do that.
What's your vision for Sierra Leone?
My vision of Sierra Leone is just like my vision in Africa. I do think that Sierra Leone, just like many cases in Africa, you have to fix some very important problems.
What is it?
In the case of Sierra Leone, corruption and electricity, water is certainly a major problem.
Do you have solutions to those problems? How we can solve them?
Yes. For example, in Gambia, I mentioned this before. Some years ago, I was in Gambia. They also have a lot of problem with electricity. It was cut off all the time. And in Sierra Leone, it's even worse. So there's a major problem in Sierra Leone. But when I came back to Gambia this year, and I noticed that much of the problem was, there's a lot of improvement, but it's still bad, but it was not so bad. So you can learn from them and see what did they do? They asked the Chinese to come in and help them. Because China now is the leading producer of renewable energy. Hydropower, wind power, solar panels, and all that. So that is a good solution. Another one is political. Instead of waiting for the national government to come in, sometimes you have to wait forever because they're also corrupt. So you can engage in grassroots.
What's the solution to corruption?
Grassroots organizations, communities, neighborhood, so that they can fix the problem locally. So if every neighborhood is fixing their own problem, then you don't need the national government and wait forever for the national government.
What's the solution to corruption problem in Sierra Leone? How could we address it?
There are a lot of solutions because corruption is not, it's just a cliche. There are a lot of different categories of corruption. Work ethics, by the way, a low work ethics, laziness is also part of the corruption too. Political tribalism, political nepotism is another form of corruption too. Stealing, embezzlement and all that, that's also corruption too. So it depends on which one, but each of them have different solutions about that.
All right. So I think that we'll get for end for today, but before that, Satna being Dr. Peter Baofu, an American visionary and author of 150 new theories and vision in 180 scholarly books as of July 2023, and numerous articles to provide a visionary challenge to conventional wisdom in all fields of knowledge. Well, a lot. Professor, I want to say thanks, and unfortunately I understand you'll be going back on Thursday. What could you say to your viewers and listeners, and then are we expecting you back in Sierra Leone?
Maybe you should ask
Sierra Leone is a
God.
nice country.
Maybe you should ask God for the answer, because I never say never in life, but I might. Just many years ago, people asked me if I want ever come to Africa. I said, I'm not sure, but here I am. Not just one.
Maybe I don't know if you like that question. What do you think about Sierra Leoneans and people other part of the world? I mean, are they friendly? Are they?
No, yes, this is one of the things, one good thing that I have to say too is that people in Africa, especially over here too, are quite friendly and hospitable. I understand there are a lot of problems, I understand that, but on the good side, for example, you will see much less of this if, let's say, if you go to some other countries.
Thank you very much for having you. God bless you. Hope we'll meet again.
Thank you for having me.
It's a small world. All right. So, family, that's it. This is the Hot Seat. This program, they come to you every Wednesday, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. If you miss, you go get a repeat on Saturday on AYV. Just check out all the platforms out there on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. Till then, have a good time. God bless you. Bye-bye.